Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Oscar-winning Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein, who's behind a string of hits including Pulp Fiction and Shakespeare in Love, has been sacked by the company he co-founded. He's accused of sexually harassing women over 3 decades. The actress Dame Judi Dench has said the allegations are horrifying. Nick Bryant's report contains some flashing images.
He's a behind-the-camera figure who's become one of the movie industry's most prominent red carpet stars. Harvey Weinstein, now cast by some as a sexual predator, the alleged villain in a saga of his own making. He's the producer behind a string of hits. Pulp Fiction showed how he could turn art house films into box office sensations. The King's Speech brought Oscar-winning success. But now he's been fired from the company he co-founded, in light of what the Weinstein Company described as new information about his misconduct. Ashley Judd was one of the first actresses to speak out. The New York Times reported he'd reached settlements with at least 8 women who claimed he'd sexually harassed them.
I think the question stands, who protected Harvey Weinstein? Who protected the women? Did the women feel they could speak up? Did they feel that anybody would believe them? Did they fear that this would hurt their careers?
The plot sounds like a throwback to the bad old days of Hollywood, a movie mogul allegedly preying on aspiring young actresses in a modern-day version of the casting couch. But the industry has been slow to publicly condemn a figure of enormous influence, one with the power to break as well as make careers.
Harvey Weinstein is a prominent Democrat with friends such as Hillary Clinton in high places. But today, the First Lady of Hollywood, Meryl Streep, a friend who once referred to him as God, spoke out about the claims. The disgraceful news about Harvey Weinstein has appalled those of us whose work he championed. The intrepid women who raised their voices to expose this abuse are our heroes.
Mr. Tilney!
Judi Dench, who won an Oscar for her role in the Weinstein movie Shakespeare in Love, said the allegations were horrifying. Last week he apologised for behaviour which in the past had caused a lot of pain, but also claimed many of the accusations are false. This, though, is a storyline that even he can't control.
And right back here, Harvey, if you don't mind.
Nick Bryant, BBC News, Washington.
Now, he was one of the most powerful film producers in Hollywood. Now, Harvey Weinstein has been sacked by the board of his own company after a string of women came forward alleging he'd sexually harassed them. Weinstein, who produced hits such as Pulp Fiction and The King's Speech, had apologised for his behaviour and taken a leave of absence. But the Weinstein Company decided he had to go. And just to warn you, this report from Alex Thompson contains flash photography and sexual references.
Tinseltown is tarnished because they don't come much bigger in Hollywood than Harvey Weinstein.
I just want to thank my agent, Kevin Uvain, and God, Harvey Weinstein.
But tonight, Meryl Streep says she had no idea, and she called his alleged sexual harassment disgraceful and an abuse of power.
We have no Juliet.
No Juliet?
No, Juliet!
Weinstein, Hollywood's uber producer, making mainstream independent films like Shakespeare in Love.
Get up, you can't sit there, get up!
Why not? It's a chair.
No,
The King's Speech. And Pulp Fiction, which cemented his reputation and Tarantino's. But on Thursday, a New York Times investigation revealed another alleged CV, years as a sexual predator, living down to the tawdry casting couch cliché.
We spoke to women from many different places, many different ages. Most of them did not know one another. This was a 25-year time span, and yet so many of the women had similar stories.
The range of alleged victims apparently as wide as the years of harassment were long. Actors, secretaries, journalists.
That's where he cornered me in this vestibule and leaned in and tried to kiss me. I had no idea what was going to happen, and it happened very quickly, and he immediately exposed himself.
And she claims he then committed an obscene act. Actor and alleged victim Rose McGowan rounded on Hollywood for staying so silent so long.
This is the girl that was hurt by a monster. This is who you are shaming with your silence.
And
ladies of Hollywood, your silence is deafening.
for years there'd been hints, whispers, even a sketch.
Oh, please. I'm not afraid of anyone in show business. I turned down intercourse with Harvey Weinstein on no less than 3 occasions out of 5.
4 days after the New York Times expose, last night Mr. Weinstein's company parted company with Mr. Weinstein.
In the light of new information about misconduct by Harvey Weinstein that has emerged in the past few days, the directors of the Weinstein Company have determined that his employment with the Weinstein Company is terminated, effective immediately.
Harvey Weinstein's own response is curious. On the one hand, he says, I grew up in the different culture of the 60s and 70s, but that's no excuse, and I'm very sorry. On the other, his lawyers accuse the New York Times of false reporting and are threatening to sue.
Alex Thompson reporting.
Now, in recent years, we've got used to revelations about powerful men abusing their positions. Now, it is Hollywood's turn, and I suppose the obvious question is, why did it take so long to come to light? Since the camera's first roll back in the silent era, powerful studio bosses have exploited their position to get sexual favours from wannabe film stars, what has always been known, rather grotesquely, as the casting couch. And it seems it's very far from a thing of the past too. Some of the cinema's biggest stars, like Dame Judi Dench and Meryl Streep, are now lining up in shocked revulsion at claims against the movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, many of which he denies.
For decades, he was the Hollywood player who could make or break careers. But Harvey Weinstein now appears to have destroyed his own. Sacked by the company he helped set up, a growing list of women accusing him of sexual harassment. A man who was once feted in the industry.
I just want to thank God, Harvey Weinstein.
5 years ago, Meryl Streep sang his praises after she won a Golden Globe for The Iron Lady, a film he'd produced. Today, though, there was this statement from her. The disgraceful news about Harvey Weinstein has appalled those of us whose work he championed and those whose good and worthy causes he supported. The intrepid women who raised their voices to expose this abuse are our heroes. The behaviour is inexcusable, but the abuse of power familiar. Harvey Weinstein was acclaimed in the film industry as the movie mogul with the golden touch, turning films like The King's Speech and Shakespeare in Love into Oscar winners. But now more alleged victims, including actress Ashley Judd, are going public. Today, American TV reporter Lauren Sivan claimed she'd been cornered by Weinstein in a restaurant as he committed an obscene act.
I could not believe what I was witnessing. Could not believe what I was witnessing. It was disgusting and kind of pathetic, really, to stand there and look at this man.
Tonight, amid growing calls for Hollywood figures to speak out, one actress said there was a culture of sexual harassment.
It's just so rampant. I think that's the thing that takes your breath away. It's shocking. And the only way it stops is with people coming forward, and that's an incredibly brave thing to do. Because a woman speaking her mind has ramifications still. A woman having choice. And I support them.
There was support too tonight from Judi Dench, who worked with Weinstein on Philomena in 2013. She said although she'd been unaware of the offences, they were horrifying, and she offered her sympathy to those who'd suffered. Last week, before his sacking, Weinstein had apologised while questioning some of the allegations and making legal threats. Where once his name was synonymous with power and money, now the Weinstein Company is said to be considering a name change. This is no Hollywood ending for Harvey Weinstein. Nina Nanar, News at 10.
Now, when you read as much of the world has been doing over the last few days about the behaviour of Hollywood boss Harvey Weinstein, one can only wonder at how so much could be known about his seriously lewd behaviour by so many, and yet how so little had come into the public domain. OK, so he was an Oscar-generating machine, so there was an incentive for many who worked with him to keep calm and carry on. But he also had multiple financial settlements with women. that prevented them from causing trouble for him. Well, the whole thing is extraordinary. Joining me from Los Angeles is Amy Ziering, and she produced the Oscar-nominated documentary, The Hunting Ground, which was distributed by the Weinstein Company, and ironically, which was about sexual assault, in that case on US college campuses. A very good evening to you. I don't know how much direct or indirect experience you had of Harvey Weinstein, but would you say you were aware of all this stuff that had been going on?
No, we were not aware. We had no direct or indirect contact with Harvey Weinstein while we were making The Hunting Ground. We were working with a small subsidiary called Radius that was their independent branch that did documentaries at the time. It no longer exists. So I didn't have any interrelations, any kind of
but there's a lot of talk
with Harvey Weinstein.
There's a lot of talk that everybody in Hollywood knew. Now, is that your experience?
My experience is that generally in institutions it often is an open secret. There often are rumors and people do sort of know about these things, but there's an incredible push for everybody to stay quiet. There's tremendous fear around this issue and no one wants to speak up. We see that all the time. It's just a small percentage of men that commit these crimes. It's a serial predator crime, but the culture around them protects them and enables them, and that's the problem. And that's why we never hear about it, and that's why these stories can go on for decades.
I mean, one of the interesting things in this case, of course, is the New York Times has cited at least 8 financial settlements. As far as we know, all the financial settlements are conditional on non-disclosure, that you don't say anything, you keep it secret. We know that people were basically paid to shut up about it. Now, should we worry as a sort of an institution in our society that you can effectively pay people to shut up about something like this?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly worrisome. And you see it all the time and all the time with this issue in particular. And yeah, you do see that it has this tremendous silencing effect. It's particularly why, even though this behavior has been going on for decades, we're only hearing about it just now. So I don't know what we can do to change that, but it'd be great if people could settle without having to sign that agreement as well.
I mean, it's easy to understand in any individual case why a victim would stay quiet. I mean, they worry about their career or they need the money or anything. What do you think, and you've made films about this, what do you think societies can do to make it easier for victims to come out and report this stuff so that it is in the public domain and we don't wait 30 years to hear about it?
That's a great question, and it's got a really super easy answer. All we all have to do is believe survivors. This is the only crime that when people come forward and report, we question the veracity of what they're saying, we challenge them, we disbelieve them, and yet it presents just like every other serious felony in our society. I always say, let's take the sex out of this crime and just treat it like a crime like any other. If someone came up to you and said, I was robbed, you wouldn't say, are you sure you were robbed? Maybe you meant to give them the television set. You would say, oh my God, how can I help you? That needs to be our first response all the time when anyone tells you they've been sexually assaulted. Right. And that means for police, for investigators, for law enforcement, for friends, for colleagues, etc. And we will see a radical transformation if we all just do that simple thing. Right. But it's not that hard.
What's interesting is you are talking about these as crimes rather than civil offences in which someone has been, inconvenienced. And yet it must be wrong for me to pay somebody to cover up a crime. And that's what's been going on effectively, isn't it? If you believe that account, payments to someone that say you can't report this are payments to cover up a crime.
Well,
we wouldn't say you would never be allowed to pay someone to not report a murder. I mean, that would be a jailable offence, surely.
Well, you could pay someone, though. I mean, there are settlements, right? There are settlements for all sorts of crimes, and just this one's like no other. And often settlements, unfortunately, have non-disclosure agreements attached to them. So that's how you end up covering it up.
Sorry, I'm pushing that point harder than it probably deserves. Let me just ask you this one. Do you think he got away with it longer than he should have because he had liberal politics, was a Democrat, was in with a lot of political circles, and, was behind films or was supportive of films like yours on these kinds of issues? Do you think that gave him cover for some period?
I think he kept doing this for so long because I've seen it over and over again in institutions. Men in power are enabled by the people around them because, power speaks and power is powerful and no one wants to challenge that power. So I don't think it has anything to do with liberal or progressive predators come in all sorts of different denominations and all sorts of different political beliefs, as we know and see. I mean, there's people in incredible positions of power right now that are sexual predators that identify as Republicans, So I don't.
No correlation.
I don't see. There's absolutely no correlation. No. I think he was like in any other institution we've seen. When men commit these crimes, and again, it's a small percentage of men that commit these crimes. They are usually men in positions of power, and when they're in positions of power, everyone is afraid of going forward and speaking out against them.
Amy Ziering, thanks so much for speaking to us about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Anyway, so let's take a look at this story. Meryl and Judy lead the shaming of Harvey Weinstein.
It's the collapse of a film god, because that's what he is. I mean, everybody who's anybody in the film has worked with him. Oscars have been showered on his work. Just think about The King's Speech, that magnificent film. And good old Judi Dench and Meryl Streep straight in there, condemning him, appalling. Talk now of him having his CBE taken off of him. He got an honorary CBE. So I always think it's an abuse of the system, frankly, because he's not British. But the Mail has looked at these other A-listers who've been pointedly said very little. And who was the actress who said today, "Come on, ladies, your silence is shaming"?
Oh, it is shaming.
Because there have been many, there's many examples. I mean, isn't it 7 or 8 cases where money was paid out?
Absolutely, and there were confidentiality agreements which are now being broken. But whereas Gwyneth Paltrow, Helen Milne, Keira Knightley, Emma Watson, Kate Winslet, Jennifer Lawrence, Nicole Kidman, Julia Roberts, Scarlett Johansson, they might have said something in the last few hours. If so good. Also, where is Hillary Clinton? She took his campaign donations from him. The Obamas, who had their child go and get work experience at the studios. Now, none of them might have known. At a pinch, you could believe none of them knew. But now you do.
Well, there are allegations to extent, but he has been sacked from his company, and he has put a statement out admitting he's behaved inappropriately. His wife's sticking by him. And there's some.
But sometimes you have to treat as you find. If someone's been good to you, nice to you, decent to you.
But there's some suggestion he said to his fellow former colleagues, "Please suggest I get treatment because I need treatment." I mean, he's a bully.
Look,
that's what he is, and he's a predator, and he's exploiting his powerful position.
If somebody's been kind to you and have helped your career, you're going to feel a debt. But what about supporting all those other people who've been abused, and it wasn't abuse of power? He had a position over people's lives, and he was...
over their careers. And if you're young and ambitious, and you may think that's what you have to do to get a big part.
And it's dreadful. That's why you have to condemn it.
And also, he's a big man physically, so which would be even more intimidating and ugly. And also, he's an ugly bloke too, vile. He is. I'm sorry, he is.
Sink it to that level.
Lump.